development management job. If the NDC wins the forthcoming elections, and God forbid, should the president not be able to perform his functions, she could be the head of state. We know that being number 2 itself does not guarantee success in the number 1 position unless one has other competencies. We have had 2 cases of vice presidents later becoming presidents in Ghana, and your judgment is as good as mine. Finally, the above leads to the question as to whether Mahama has the leadership qualities to lead the Mahama-Nana duo to make a difference in Ghana in a one term of 4 years, which Mahama has. Whether he will be, if he wins the 7th December elections under our constitution. In that regard, my words, and I want to say, I stand by them, which I made, I think, on 16th October 2016, still hold. John Dramani Mahama today, as he was then, does not have the full complement of leadership competencies to lead Ghana, be it on vision, strategic thinking, selecting and leading even a team B, because his own party member said he selects team C, curbing the menace of corruption, or prosecuting a credible development agenda. In our democracy, we will all have to live with the people's choice. But Ghana will be the worst off if Mahama ever becomes president again, I think. The NDC did Ghana a disservice in fielding him as a one-term presidential candidate who can serve for only 4 years. Even among the narrow confines of those who contested him, to me, there were better candidates. But Ghana's politics does not always produce the best candidate, but those whom monocracy and propaganda favor. And I thank you for allowing me to read my rejoinder.
Of course, Prof. Thank you very much for sharing that. But of course, now you have commented on Professor Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman quite extensively, and
because I had to.
Yeah, well, and picking from what you've said, it sounds like you don't think she's a particularly good leader.
What I'm saying is that I have not assessed her in her leadership role as vice president. So far, I think he managed as a vice chancellor. I said the minister, he didn't perform any worse than anybody else. But I don't think that, from my personal point of view, I'm in a position to say what was attributed to me that she is a good leader. I haven't said it. I haven't come up with that conclusion, and I don't want to say that on this platform either. I think that is yet to be tested on that score.
So you spoke about the 2 sort of circumstances under which you've encountered her. And the first one was in her academic career. And you are at pains to point out that you don't actually think that the position she held is a good assessment of leadership. That's the vice chancellor position. You then go ahead to say that in your second circumstance of encountering her, which is as a minister, you don't think that she was the best. You don't think she was exceptional among the appointees. So on the 2 encounters you've had with her, you didn't think much of her.
No, but most of us are normal human beings. Being exceptional means you stand out. I mean, for example, I mentioned I decided not to use a living person, but Professor Kwesi Andam as a vice chancellor was exceptional. But that didn't mean that the others were normal. Many, of course, there are other exceptional ones among them, but I didn't want to particularize them. So, not being exceptional doesn't mean that you are not okay. And other than that, are well.
so your verdict would be that Professor Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman is normal.
Exactly. I mean, and her achievement, is actually, if you talk about the average Ghanaian, she's not an average Ghanaian. I mean, to be a professor of English and a vice chancellor and a minister, for goodness sake, you have to give her the credit. But try to say that she's exceptional, you must have other reasons to that effect.
Well, we know that in our world, in our society, it always takes a little bit more from a woman to do what most men do as a matter of course. So it takes an exceptional woman to rise as high as a mediocre man. Would you still, on that basis, consider Professor Opoku-Agyeman to be normal?
Let me say that again. There's an area I haven't done research about Professor Anna, but it depends upon your parentage. Some of us were born in the Shiromwase, even we struggle to be admitted into primary one. So yes, if we take womanhood as a whole, there has been a historic discrimination. But if we take Professor Stephen Adei's women, they were as privileged as any boy. And in fact, not privileged as any boy, they were more privileged than the average Ghanaian. So this generalization should stop. Because yes, there are many women, most women are discriminated against, but if you happen to be, with all deference, Akufo-Addo's daughter, you say that because she's a woman, I mean, compared to Akosi Buruku's daughter. So, who gave birth to her? What circumstances was she raised?
Do you think
a few, not as many as we want, women have been as privileged and more privileged than men?
Prof, do you think her parentage and her background would play a role when she's attempting to aspire to a position like Vice Chancellor of University of Cape Coast? Do you think it would matter who her parents were?
No, it will have mattered, because in her time and my time, most women would not even have gone to school at all, let alone going to university and getting a degree. But not in her performance. As for the performance, if you are given the opportunity and you don't perform well, you blow it. But the point I'm trying to say is that we must be very careful that you think that every woman has been disadvantaged compared to men. No, most women have been disadvantaged historically. And I was saying that I will be quite on, I won't accept that my two daughters are disadvantaged. I mean, they had all the privileges above the average Ghanaian boy. That's what I'm saying.
Right. Okay. Well, thanks for that. Prof, I also want us to take a minute to talk about what's happening today in Ghana's education sector. Our schools are open. The final year students for BEC, WASI, and university are in school. And it's COVID-19 season. We're all very concerned, and already we are starting to see some cases break out in some schools across the country. There is concern. Some are asking, so what's the plan? At what point would a school then say we have to shut down because we've got cases? We've seen institutions shut down because they've had cases. We've seen the president go into self quarantine because someone near him, one person at least near him, has contracted the virus, so he's gone into self quarantine. So if there is a school where 6 students, for example, have got it, should they not also be considering going into some form of shutdown? How do you think generally about how the return of the final years is being managed in the context of COVID-19?
First of all, I will not tread into areas I don't have expertise. I think that eventually the epidemiologists and the medical people will be the best to tell when this should stop or not. But generally, I think that we must thank God that the return of the students has not resulted in any unusual spiking of COVID in the schools compared to the general Ghanaian population. And therefore, 6 students could have contacted it even outside. I don't think that at this moment the situation requires revision of their being in school. Number two, I think that we must rather make sure that if there is any, and if I'm correct, I was reading again, you cannot be sure of these statistics if it doesn't come from the Ghana Medical Service. About 8 or so schools have discovered, these students in 1 or 2 here having that. I don't think that given the general circumstances, there is any cause for alarm in what is happening in the schools. In fact, I think that they are in a safer environment at this moment than being within the general society. And if, God forbid, should there be an increase in their conditions, and remember they are in the 5th week now, so we are not talking about something that is out of proportion, then there should be a cause for us because we must care for our kids. But at this moment, there's no reason why there should be a revision of the students being there and continuing their education.
There are some who question the position. The position you shared, that you believe they are safer where they are. You're not the only one who has expressed that view, and there are some who challenge this view. They suggest that some of them are there only because the state has decided that the WASSCE exams must be written. So, for example, there is a young boy who died at KNUST SHS because he had a condition we believe to be an ulcer. He was sick, quite desperately sick, and the teachers wouldn't allow anybody to go near this child, according to the reports. And so, for 3 hours, nobody attended to this child, took him to a hospital until his own father came to take him, and the poor boy died. This boy is a day student normally and was only in boarding school under the control of the teachers because the state reopened schools for WASSCE to be written. There are those who suggest that this decision in itself, at a time like this, was not prudent, that it was not life and death for these students to write their final exams, and it would have been safer if they had not been asked to come back to school. What's your professional view on this?
First of all, once again, let me not go into the medical aspects, and also, of course, anyone to lose your child is so painful that you don't just trifle with it. It's said that everybody is wiser on hindsight is always 2020. I think that this incident by itself does not negate the whole of decision for the children to go back to school. And I think that taken as a whole, the same way now, if I and you fall down in the street, other people will leave us, are likely to leave us to die because of COVID, which is unfortunate. I mean, it's a matter of approaching the person with some sort of wisdom.
But that wouldn't happen to you at home, Prof, would it? If you were to fall sick at home, you would not be neglected.
Anywhere, in the street or anywhere else, everybody is more cautious now. I think that it was quite irresponsible that they should have called at least ambulance with immediate effect and other things. But so what I'm saying is that don't make one incident, as unfortunate as it is, to negate a whole policy affecting how many children? That's 385. And these things could have happened also even on any street of Ghana. So it is not something to trifle with. One life, one Ghanaian life is as important. If you're a Christian, it's like Jesus says that it shall not profit a man for a man to lose his soul if he gain the whole world. But I think that to say that by that, the policy of continuing, finding and experimenting in a wise way, the continuation of children's education. And COVID is going to be with us, I mark it, for a long time. It's not a December or other things. We must find a way, and all of us must bring our minds together as the best way to do it. Not to say that, when you did this one incident has happened, and therefore that is, to me, a cheap way of solving a problem. We have a bigger national issue to address.
Just this morning, I was watching the international news, and in Hong Kong, where, in fact, Hong Kong was one of the first countries outside China to record cases of COVID-19. But they've managed to keep their case count, the general case count, quite low. Recently, they reopened their schools. And by the way, they got full control over community spread before they reopened their schools. Now, after they reopened their schools, they recorded about 24 more cases in the general society. They've shut down their schools again as a result of that. Now, the reason why they did that is because they had a benchmark. They had stated as part of their plan that if they contract this number of cases, they will shut down the schools. Should Ghana follow the same methodology? Should we have a benchmark? Should it be so that if we hit a certain number of cases, we will shut down the schools again?
First of all, I'm sure, and I mean, not sure of somebody telling me that the Ghana Medical Association and the government definitely will have something in view, but I don't know. Number two, you must be very careful comparing Ghana with Hong Kong or Taiwan. Listen, no matter what we do, our community social distancing, how do you social distance somebody living in a suburb in Accra, which I will not mention because there are several of them before they get stigmatized, where the average room has 10 people sleeping there and others. We must, in our situation, try to learn from other countries, but situate it in our context. It is, when we got locked down, of course, some people were starving. An attempt to distribute food would have even worsened the situation. Why? Because you get hundreds of people rushing on the food to get their share. We must manage this unfortunate pandemic with our context in view, and it requires a lot of wisdom rather than to say this is done here, this is done in America, this is done in Hong Kong, and other things, because we are in a very peculiar socio-cultural context, and we must approach it with quite wisdom. But to answer your question, I will be surprised, and because of my lack of knowledge, if the government and the Ghana Medical Association is not monitoring, and that at a certain threshold, they will act. But again, in our society, even if that is there, I wonder whether it will be prudent to disclose it.
Right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, thank you. I was actually going to say that the Ghana Medical Association is the one that has been calling for such an arrangement. So I guess if there is one, then the Ghana Medical Association is not aware, which would be strange in itself, wouldn't it?
I will be surprised whether... I will be most surprised whether in the discussion between government and GMA, there isn't a contingency plan. But I don't know about it. And I would rather be more surprised, both about the government, about the Ghana Medical Association, if those in charge of this. It's not an area I am in charge of, but I will be most surprised. I'm sure there is. But in the Ghanaian context, what will happen, the discussion on social media and other things, if I were in that category, I will not disclose it.
Right. Okay, Prof, I want us to also talk about another issue that has been happening in recent times, and you speak extensively on governance issues. That's why I'm keen to hear your opinion on this. There is some back and forth going on between the Auditor General and the Presidency. Some letters have been exchanged He's currently on leave. The presidency insists that he should be taking his accumulated leave of 160 something odd days. He disputes this. He says that it's actually not even legal for a person to accumulate leave. And there's back and forth. There's issue of the board and the role he plays with the board and so forth. I mean, as a person who speaks so much on governance, I wonder what your take has been on this whole issue with the Auditor General.
First of all, let me state clearly that Domlevu is a personal friend of mine. I mean, when I talk about personal friend, I'm not talking about the Ghanaian sense of you are not my friend, my friend. So that is, we have been together for many years. We WhatsApp each other even up to the after his forced leave and everything else. So that is, I want to make it clear. He's my friend. He will continue to be my friend, whether Auditor General or not. So I wanted to say that, and I like him. Number two, I wish that this matter would have been handled differently. I don't know what went behind the scene, because I would have expected, a chat in the quiet about these things, and then not even for a voluntary taking leave and the rest. But, there has been a very, not the best of relationship of late between the Auditor General and the government, including that of being in court with the senior minister, or the senior minister being in court with him, because I think the senior minister who took it to court. So, for me, it was not quite surprising. It was not surprising for me to hear this announcement, which I think the announcement came with a reference to what happened to the previous Auditor General, which I thought was not necessary. But I will not go back as people are. Now that this has happened, what is the way forward? I think that you will not have made this statement to go back, and therefore all the issue about the Daniel back and everything else, to me, it's not going to happen because of. Here you are talking about government egos, everything else. It's not going to. Being an employee, the worst case is that it may go to court. If it goes to court, Ghanaian legal system, before it is completed, the leave days will have passed. And I think that this is one of the unfortunate incidents which I wish didn't happen at all, and that have done in the quiet if there was a need for it. But going forward, I think that there's practically no, the discussion about his coming back is going to be futile. No, every government in Ghana, whether it is CPP, NDC, LVP, having taken this decision, will not go back. It may result, if at worst, it may result in some penalties if the court so decides. So I think that it's an unfortunate incident that my friend has had to go through. But in terms of national governance and corporate governance at this stage, we should be going forward.
And by going forward, you mean court, to the courts?
No, I think that at this moment, it is in the bosom of Daniel, whether he wants to go to court, or he will just acquiesce. But I don't think that you can get any government to back down.
Even if it is found to have, even if the government's action is found to have been wrong?
What I'm saying is that if I wouldn't talk about wrong, or if a court decides otherwise, I think that, these things have got a very, very, some serious implications in the sense that it's also employer-employee relationship, and I don't know law enough whether anybody can more or less force an employer to continue keeping somebody, but you can be, fined or asked to pay compensation. If it had to do with removal of him from office, which under our constitution can only be done by impeachment, then, but this is, they seem to have gone about it in a very smart way. This is not sacking him. You see, so I don't know what the courts will do, but it is in the bosom of Daniel, and so far he hasn't asked my advice. But I think that it's a very, very, very a test case of it will be an interesting test case because what it is now, it is not removing him from office, which unless you do it through impeachment, you cannot do it.
Right.
But asking you to go on leave. I heard Austin Gami, who is an expert in this area, says that there is nothing like, accumulated leave. But if we go on that line, then there are so many people who must be paid, who must refund money to the state, because people everywhere else I know have gone on with accumulated leave at the end of their tenure have been paid. Yeah. So there are a lot of things, and at this moment, I think that let's focus on pragmatic solution. This thing has happened. Will the government let him back? The answer is unless compelled to, no government in Ghana will bring him back. And what are the other reliefs available for him? I cannot discuss that one in public.
Okay. What impact?
That is my friend.
Yes, you did make that point, Prof. What impact do you think all of this back and forth will have on the fight against corruption in Ghana? Bearing in mind the iconic status that Daniel Domelevo has risen to in the time that he's been in office. The amount of money he has saved the state, the unprecedented actions he has taken, the support that he has enjoyed from civil society and citizens at large for the efforts he has made to point out the things that have gone wrong in previous government, in present government, and try to resolve them. What do you think all of this impact? What will be the impact of that on the fight against corruption?
Again, let me say that my friend leaving office is not something that I travel with, but he would have left office in June anyway, which is very, very close, June next year. So he has about 1 year. I think that there's no doubt that he was making an important contribution. But once again, this is where I must quote Obama. It's institutions rather than personalities. And at this moment, for me, all that is happening is the impact on the institutions, which we seem not to be building over the years, is what worries me, rather than him as he has made his contribution. And I think that we should have, building on it, will have been the best for us, and it depends upon what happens with his living. But no doubt at all that he will be missed in the fight against corruption. I mean, but I'm sure some people, not only in NPP but NDC, will be laughing because I hear that still the ministers who chop double salary are still not having been brought to book. So I think that Daniel's living office temporary. I think he will be back before his term ends. Will be probably welcome by both sides. I haven't followed the political commentators, both NDC and MPP, but both sides, some of them will be rejoicing. But I agree with you that at least in the public arena, the impression was that he was making effort against the anti-corruption crusade, like my friend Amidu. So I think that at least impressionistically, it is not good for that fight.
Mm. What does it say of the government's position on fighting corruption? If they say that somebody who is so instrumental in it, they can do without him in office for 6 months, half a year, so he should go on leave. What does it say, about the government's desire to fight corruption?
That's what I'm saying, is that 6 months will not be the deciding factor of success or failure of the anti-corruption crusade, but rather the impression that can be created, to me, is what is quite important. And for me, if it hadn't happened, that would have been my preference. Once it has happened, let us manage, and all of us, to see how best we can sustain this anti-corruption one, because it is one area me and him share passion.
Okay, Prof, before we go, I've just got a rather important question that has come in from our business team. And this is in light of your current role at the GRA. And they want to know how the GRA is handling challenges faced by importers as a result of the Unipass system.
Tell the guy that, you can't bring trick questions in the middle of an examination.
Oh, Prof. You can never be tricked.
Let me answer it.
Sure.
First of all, I think that Ghanaians make so much noise, and therefore we, in the technical place, get ourselves caught within the hard rock and what the English were.
The rock and a hard place.
Yes, I was going to call Onana to come and help me. I think that the transition from GCNet to ICOMS could have been better. There's no doubt at all. But believe me, I am now very convinced that ICOMS will give us a better outcomes than what we had previously. Why am I saying this? And we haven't resolved all the challenges. I can tell you, point blank, I'm monitoring it every day. But May and June, we are getting better results, even under COVID. Far more collection of revenue than we have done on the average for the previous quarter, 6 months. It is so, and then I myself, was, of course, if you are in such a position, you have palpitations. Well, when these things collapse, what do we do? But we are heading towards a much, much better system. We were getting about 800 million. Last month, we got 1.2 billion. Imagine, even under reduced import volumes. So a lot of things were actually going under the bridge in the old system, and much of the oppositions we were receiving were coming from the fact that the people are getting exposed and this new system. But that said, we have challenges. It will take us some time to resolve them, but the results so far are very, very promising. And I'm glad to say that up to the end of May, despite COVID, our target revenue was only 8.6% below target. So we are trying to do the best for, as I say, for God, family, and country.
Right, now, there was one more question from the business team, and it's also about the GRA. And they want to know about online businesses, e-commerce businesses. There's been a boom in online businesses, especially because of COVID-19. Advertising and so forth online has really gone up.
Yes.
And many of these businesses are believed to be non-tax compliant. But the GRA has had their eye on them for a while. I'm wondering whether there's a plan now to set up any kind of operation to bring them into the fold for taxation purposes.
The answer is yes, but let me not disclose the measures we are putting in place until they get fruition, because as was announced in the budget last November, this year we are going fully IT. Unfortunately, elephants take a longer time to turn, and bureaucracies catch up slowly, but we will catch up with everybody. We know that there's no reason why Ghana, we shouldn't not be collecting 20% of our GDP in taxes compared to our comparators. And we all know rent, capital gains, e-commerce, everything. So we have set a system working on it. But this is something I wouldn't like to, because I don't want people to ask next week, how far have you gone? 2 weeks.
but that's accountability, Prof, isn't it? So once we know your plans, then we can hold you to account for them.
What we are saying, because there are certain things you have not fully in control. For example, we have 3 systems. We are already procurement going on and other things. You cannot say that this will happen tomorrow, but I can assure you that the Lord being on our side, we will catch up with the e-commerce, with the capital gains, with the rentals, and the many which are going through the net. Our target is to move from 13% of GDP to 20%. And these are, the e-commerce is one of the targeted area, but it's a technical one. You have to catch them properly. And I'm not in a position to talk about all the details, because though I'm briefed as a board, we are briefed periodically. I think let's have another session, probably run about October.
Very well, Prof. We'll hold you to that. We're very interested in this, so we will have another conversation later. But I want to thank you so much for your time with us today. It's been a pleasure as always. Thank you so much for speaking to us.
I thought we were going to comment on how I've made my home studio.
In fact, Prof, we can see it here in the studio, but our listeners can't see it. So I didn't want to tantalize them too much. I love your kente background. It works very well with your.
I just covered my bookshelf with a kente. That's all.
It's a new style. We like it. Professor Stephen Adei, thank you very much for your time with us this morning.
You are welcome.
Well, there you go. There you go. What do you think of everything you've heard from Prof Adei? We'd love your tweets and thoughts on WhatsApp and Twitter. So use the hashtag JoySMS. We'll read a few of them in a short while. Or send them to us on WhatsApp, 0244-340-437. Coming up, the Joy ballot box was in Hohoy, and boy, was it on fire. We're bringing you all the details and a hotline documentary to remember. Seth Kwame Boateng briefs us on his latest work after these.
DSTV and the leaks that get the big boys are back.
Is your heart racing yet? I know mine is.
You're crowd near the live sports papa Ebrel. Gigi Dow couch muna budget favorite stars here. Well, we are sporting leaks that get papa no so.
Sergio Aguero has conspired in the final. Cristiano Ronaldo! Something special for his hat-trick goal. Messi does it! A priceless goal from Lionel Messi! Drama from day one! This is the league we want to watch!
Show DSTV DSTV Litum, Nimu Stasia, who suffered to Muni now of Biaba Cope. DSTV, Live Sports Biaba Cope.
Because the greatest things are born from the smallest of thoughts. Just as your seeds in a rich soil grow to become trees that bear fruits, the Agricultural Development Bank, ADB, helps you sow, invest, nurture, and grow your personal and business plans by serving you with years of banking ingenuity and experience in agribusiness, corporate and commercial banking, consumer finance, e-banking, and many more through our